and his power, while the thin-lipped intruder put the impress of his cold and implacable spirit upon the sea and sky. With every daybreak the rising sun had to wade through a crimson stream, luminous and sinister, like the spilt blood of celestial bodies murdered during the night. In this particular instance the mean interloper held the road for some 6 weeks on end, establishing his particular administrative methods over the best part of the North Atlantic. It looked as if the easterly weather had come to stay forever, or, at least, till we had all starved to death in the held-up fleet, starved within sight, as it were, of plenty, within touch almost of the bountiful heart of the empire. There we were, dotting with our dry white sails the hard blueness of the deep sea. There we were, a growing company of ships, each with her burden of grain, of timber, of wool, of hides, and even of oranges, for we had 1 or 2 belated fruit schooners in company. There we were, in that memorable spring of a certain year in the late '70s, dodging to and fro, baffled on every tack, and with our stores running down to sweepings of bread lockers and scrapings of sugar casks. It was just like the east wind's nature to inflict starvation upon the bodies of unoffending sailors, while he corrupted their simple souls by an exasperation leading to outbursts of profanity as lurid as his blood-red sunrises. They were followed by grey days under the cover of high, motionless clouds that looked as if carved in a slab of ash-coloured marble. And each mean starved sunset left us calling with imprecations upon the west wind, even in its most veiled, misty mood, to wake up and give us our liberty, if only to rush on and dash the heads of our ships against the very walls of our unapproachable home. Chapter 29. In the atmosphere of the easterly weather, as pellucid as a piece of crystal and refracting like a prism, we could see the appalling numbers of our helpless company, even to those who in more normal conditions would have remained invisible, sails down under the horizon. It is the malicious pleasure of the east wind to augment the power of your eyesight, in order, perhaps, that you should see better the perfect humiliation, the hopeless character of your captivity. Easterly weather is generally clear, and that is all that can be said for it. Almost supernaturally clear when it likes, but whatever its mood, there is something uncanny in its nature. Its duplicity is such that it will deceive a scientific instrument. No barometer will give warning of an easterly gale were it ever so wet. It would be an unjust and ungrateful thing to say that a barometer is a stupid contrivance. It is simply that the wiles of the east wind are too much for its fundamental honesty. After years and years of experience, the most trusty instrument of the sort that ever went to sea, screwed onto a ship's cabin bulkhead, will, almost invariably, be induced to rise by the diabolic ingenuity of the easterly weather, just at the moment when the easterly weather, discarding its methods of hard, dry, impassive cruelty, contemplates drowning what is left of your spirit in torrents of a peculiarly cold and horrid rain. The sleet and hail squalls following the lightning at the end of a westerly gale are cold and benumbing and stinging and cruel enough. But the dry easterly weather, when it turns to wet, seems to rain poison showers upon your head. It is a sort of steady, persistent, overwhelming, endlessly driving downpour, which makes your heart sick and opens it to dismal forebodings. and the stormy mood of the easterly weather looms black upon the sky with a peculiar and amazing blackness. The west wind hangs heavy grey curtains of mist and spray before your gaze, but the eastern interloper of the narrow seas, when he has mustered his courage and cruelty to the point of a gale, puts them out completely, makes you feel blind for life upon a lee shore. It is the wind also that brings snow. Out of his black and merciless heart he flings a white blinding sheet upon the ships of the sea. He has more manners of villainy and no more conscience than an Italian prince of the 17th century. His weapon is a dagger carried under a black cloak when he goes out on his unlawful enterprises. The mere hint of his approach fills with dread every craft that swims the sea, from fishing smacks to four-masted ships that recognize the sway of the west wind. Even in his most accommodating mood he inspires a dread of treachery. I have heard upwards of 10 score of windlasses spring like one into clanking life in the dead of night, filling the downs with a panic-struck sound of anchors being torn hurriedly out of the ground at the first breath of his approach. Fortunately his heart often fails him. He does not always blow home upon our exposed coast. He has not the fearless temper of his westerly brother. The natures of those two winds that share the dominions of the great oceans are fundamentally different. It is strange that the winds which men are prone to style capricious remain true to their character in all the various regions of the earth. To us here, for instance, the east wind comes across a great continent, sweeping over the greatest body of solid land upon this earth. For the Australian east coast, the east wind is the wind of the ocean, coming across the greatest body of water upon the globe. And yet here and there its characteristics remain the same, with a strange consistency in everything that is vile and base. The members of the west wind's dynasty are modified in a way by the regions they rule. As a Hohenzollern, without ceasing to be himself, becomes a Roumanian by virtue of his throne, or a Saxe-Coburg learns to put the dress of Bulgarian phrases upon his particular thoughts, whatever they are. The autocratic sway of the west wind, whether 40 north or 40 south of the equator, is characterized by an open, generous, frank, barbarous recklessness. For he is a great autocrat, and to be a great autocrat you must be a great barbarian. I have been too much moulded to his sway to nurse now any idea of rebellion in my heart. Moreover, what is a rebellion within the four walls of a room against the tempestuous rule of the west wind? I remain faithful to the memory of the mighty king with a double-edged sword in one hand, and in the other holding out rewards of great daily runs and famously quick passages to those of his courtiers who knew how to wait watchfully for every sign of his secret mood. As we deep-water men always reckoned, he made 1 year in 3 fairly lively for anybody having business upon the Atlantic or down there along the forties of the Southern Ocean. You had to take the bitter with the sweet, and it cannot be denied he played carelessly with our lives and fortunes. But then he was always a great king, fit to rule over the great waters where, strictly speaking, a man would have no business whatever but for his audacity. The audacious should not complain. A mere trader ought not to grumble at the toils levied by a mighty king. His mightiness was sometimes very overwhelming, but even when you had to defy him openly, as on the banks of the Agulhas, homeward bound from the East Indies, or on the outward passage around the Horn, he struck at you fairly his stinging blows, full in the face too, and it was your business not to get too much staggered. And after